economy to truly unleash the power of human productive and creative potential, I believe that we all must have the freedom to quit. 3 years ago, I had a job that I really hated. I was a municipal financial consultant at a large firm where my days consisted of sitting behind a spreadsheet, plugging in numbers into really complex financial models, and kind of sitting there waiting for the results to come out, and it just wasn't me. To be completely honest with you, I probably spent about 20% of my time on Twitter wishing I were somewhere else. But I was trapped. I didn't know how to break free from the obligations that I had to live up to survive. I had car payments, I had really expensive San Francisco rent, I had student loans, I had obligations. And with all those obligations, which all of us have, I didn't know when I would ever get the chance to explore a career that would really help me find my passion. And then I found the sharing economy. I met the sharing economy, and I found that I could get what I needed just by making money from the things that I already had. It all started with my car, my same little sweet Honda Civic that's sitting in the parking lot across the street tonight that I drove here from Oakland. At that time, I really didn't drive my car very much. I lived in the city, and I didn't need it to get to work, and I was thinking, God, this is a waste. It's a waste, and I should really, think about selling it, get rid of it. And then one day when I was on a Twitter break at work and I was reading a tech blog, I noticed that there was a startup out there called GetAround, and it was a peer-to-peer car-sharing network. And they offered to let me do something crazy. I could take my car and hand the keys to someone I'd never met before and let them drive my car and pay me for it. And I thought, that sounds brilliant, because I wanted someone else to have to park my car on the streets of San Francisco. Is really what it was. And so that's what I started doing. I jumped right into it, and immediately I loved the interaction. I loved the fact that I was able to help out someone else who lived nearby, who needed what I had. It was matching up in a very efficient way, a have with a want. And so I jumped into that, and very soon I was earning hundreds of dollars a month. I was able to make this meaningful income, and I thought that this idea made sense in so many ways. It made sense for cities, it made sense for my bank account, it also made sense for the environment. And so I thought about how it worked across all of these other categories. And at that time, there was a proliferation of startups in this space in San Francisco. I joined Airbnb, which was the first big example of this that kind of set it all off. I even joined Skillshare, which allowed me to teach people how to bake pies in my kitchen, had people over to my house and taught them how to make the triple berry pies that my mother had taught me how to make with a careful lattice top when I was growing up. And I joined TaskRabbit. There were so many of these examples. Faithfully, one of them was Zimride. It was a ride-sharing website, really, where you could, when you were going on a road trip, sell the seats in your car to other people who were going the same way. And so I took that opportunity when I was going down to visit some of my friends in Los Angeles for New Year's, and I let other people buy seats in my car so that it would defray my cost of gas, because I was being really thrifty. And I met these amazing people. I loved the camaraderie. I loved the fact that it was efficient because I was already going that way and they needed to go that way too. And so we engaged in this transaction together, and we actually became friends. It was an amazing experience. And soon I went from being a power user to then becoming a blogger and writing about it, because anyone can be a blogger these days. I just made myself an expert. It's a little scary that it works that easily. And then I started an event series, because I saw that people wanted to come together around this idea. And so within 4 months, I quit my job, which was really, really scary. But I now had these little miniature forms of income, all these little sources of revenue that I was earning from the different ways that I was using my extra time, my extra stuff, the things I didn't need to help the people around me, so that I could make that leap. And I started this series, and it was a gathering place, monthly events where the thought leaders in this new sharing economy startup space would come together and talk about the interesting issues. And I loved it. I knew I wanted to make this my job. I felt on fire in a way that I had never felt on fire. And I was so liberated that I had been able to leave that job where I had just felt like a drone. And so I, within a very short period of time, got to know enough people that right before I ran out of money, I was able to get a few job offers. In fact, it all happened in the same week. I got 2 job offers from ride-sharing companies and 1 from a car-sharing company, because I was really focused on transportation. And one of those companies was Zimride, the ride-sharing website I mentioned earlier. And the founders, I wasn't a founder, by the way, just in case the founders actually watch this and call me out on that. I was lucky to be one of the first employees that was hired to work on their new real-time ride-sharing app, which you might have heard of. It's called Lyft. We're known for our pink mustaches. So if you've seen any of those cars around Sacramento, that's us. So Lyft allows everyday people to let others in their car and to earn money by driving people where they need to go. So as an everyday person, you can fill a role that traditionally might have been filled by a professional driver, but through the trust and accountability systems that are provided by technology, it can be safe and efficient for people to do that on their own in real time and make it really easy for people to get around their cities. So over the last 2.5 years, I've had an incredible experience with Lyft. It's completely changed my life. We've grown the company to 400 people. We're in 70 cities around the country. We've raised over $300 million, and millions of people take Lyft rides every month. It's been phenomenal. I still feel like I'm in this state of surreal, suspended animation because I can't believe that this is my life now. And I never would have had that opportunity if it hadn't been for the sharing economy itself giving me the freedom to leave my job. And now I have something I love so much that I'm willing to give it everything I've got. So without that freedom, I never would have been able to take the leap. And so that's what I think is so special about the sharing economy, is that it's really giving all of us the freedom to quit. And in doing so, it is actually creating a new kind of American safety net, something that I believe will have the potential to unlock all of our productive power that we're not using when we're in these jobs that we don't love, and allow us to provide a new growth engine for our economy. So traditionally, in order to be a business owner, there was a lot of red tape you had to go through. Because in the 20th century, to be an entrepreneur, it meant you really had to almost create an institution. You had to go out and get capital, outlay capital from investors, perhaps. You had to spend a lot of time going and getting permits and licenses and property and all of these other kinds of physical and financial infrastructure. But now everyone can be a micro-entrepreneur, and the walls are falling down. It makes it so accessible that you can be an entrepreneur on your Saturday afternoon for 2 hours, even if that's not a business that you plan to be in for the long haul. It's seamless. And that has tremendous power, but it's also disruptive, because there are traditional industries, there are regulators who didn't anticipate this kind of fluidity, or maybe are wishing it weren't happening. And so that receives a lot of attention these days, and actually takes a lot of my time to try to work within that and rise above it. But I think the story that's lost in all of that is the freedom that this provides for workers. I really think that's the story of the sharing economy, is that it provides empowerment for the American worker. So let's take just a little tour through the last 10 years of the American worker. Because increasingly, the financial situation of the worker has gotten more and more precarious. It's the perfect storm of job losses, wage stagnation, low personal savings, high consumer debt, all creating this really risky scenario for individuals. And that shifts the power such that employers have the upper hand. They have power over their employees such that employees feel afraid of leaving. And it's not that the employers are doing anything wrong, but it's just that individuals don't feel empowered to leave because they don't feel like they have other options. And so what I think is really, really magical about the sharing economy is it means that people can feel like it's in their hands at any moment to decide that they want to do something different and to not live in fear of that. And thus to be able to make choices and take risks that they might not have otherwise been willing to take. And at the end of the day, I think that's going to have a tremendous impact on our economy, because what is a better power of economic growth than unleashing the creativity and the energy of the human spirit? So I want to tell you about a few people that I've had the privilege to meet while I've been in the Lyft community and seen thousands of stories of the impact of this kind of freedom on people's lives. So this is William. William is a Lyft driver, and I had him as a driver for me one day when I was on a business trip and I was going to the airport. And William is also an absolutely exquisite singer. He has an angelic voice. He sounds like Sinatra mixed with Nat King Cole. He is just wonderful. And the way I know that is because when he was driving me to the airport, he sang to me in the car. It was probably the best, 5 p.m. rush hour commute that I've ever had to the airport, which typically isn't a very pleasant experience. But he was wonderful, and he told me his story. And he told me that he'd grown up in an urban community where his father was a pastor, and he'd grown up, singing in the choir and always wanting to bring his own kind of artistry to that music and performing in small venues, but never being able to leave his job as a studio technician and actually go and follow the career of becoming a singer and a musician by going on tour. And so since Lyft had come around, he'd been able to actually quit his job and go and follow that dream, which is incredibly inspiring. And I know he'll have great success because he's tremendously talented. And another person who really touched me was Maurice. Maurice is a young father in Chicago. And I had a chance to meet him when I was out there a few months ago for work. And he has a young son who's about 6 years old. And Maurice's wife is not around anymore. And so he takes care of his son himself. And he's been working as a grocery store clerk for several years. But he really wants more, and he's capable of more. And he hasn't known how to break away from those rigid job requirements when he needed to feed his son. But what he really wants to do is to start a bakery. He wants to go to pastry chef school and start an artisan bakery in his neighborhood on the south side, which I think is pretty cool. So he actually has been able to now follow that dream because he became a Lyft driver, was able to quit his job at the grocery store, and he's able to earn income to support his son, have a flexible schedule, and be there when his son needs him, and is close to becoming certified as a pastry chef. So something that the Department of Labor sometimes talks about is the discouraged worker. I don't know if you've ever heard that, maybe in employment numbers report on NPR or something like that. But what they're referring to is workers who have been unemployed so long that they aren't even looking for work anymore because they're so hopeless. But I think there's also another kind of discouraged worker. What about the discouragement of all of the people who are sitting in cubicles, playing Farmville all day long, wishing that their souls weren't dead, wishing that they could do something different? What is the economic impact of that discouragement? I think it's huge. And I think that if we can create a policy structure that can allow the participation of everyday people in micro-entrepreneurship through the sharing economy, that we can give the empowerment to those workers to make a different choice and to follow a different dream, and maybe to leave an abusive boss, or maybe to leave an abusive spouse, to feel like they have a safety net. And that is a tremendously, tremendously powerful network to have. And it won't be uncontroversial. There will be changes that are needed in the law, and I work a lot on that these days. I see resistance in many corners. I see established industries wishing it weren't happening, and regulators that want to put their heads in the sand. But I think that the population that will be disserviced by that at the end will be the workers who need better options and who want to take advantage of this incredible democratization of the economy to be able to lift themselves up. And so I hope that we will make the right choice. And I hope that we will tap in to this incredible engine of economic growth that is the human spirit when it is unleashed through sharing. Thank you.